Have you ever wanted for yourself more freedom? Have you ever looked around at maybe the lives of other people who are able to spend more time with their kids or maybe able to live in places where you'd love to live? And you've thought to yourself, I'd love to do that, but I don't know how. I can't. I don't have the passive recurring income that others do that would give me that kind of freedom. If you've asked that question, then today's episode is for you. Today, we're going to talk to a very dynamic couple who have developed a strategy to engage really creative financing around real estate, allowing you to build a real estate portfolio that would allow you to have that freedom that you desire. This episode is going to be a great one. I encourage you to stay tuned and pay attention because today you're going to learn some things that could give you the freedom that you've always desired. Welcome back to the Think Bigger Real Estate Podcast, where big thinking, high achieving real estate agents come to build successful businesses and all right, welcome back, everybody. I'm excited to introduce Jenn and Joe Del Fave out of Florida. You guys, thank you for coming on the show today. I know you've been on some of the biggest podcasts in the world, and I'm honored to have you here on the Think Bigger Real Estate Podcast today.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on.
Well, I immediately knew I liked you guys when I heard the reason behind why you're doing all this, which is direct alignment with the Think Bigger Real Estate Podcast mission, which is to build successful businesses and significant lives. And you guys have really designed your life so that you could spend more time with your kids. So you could have the kind of freedom to live where you want to live and really be the kind of impactful leaders, both in the home as well as in the community that you are now. And so thank you for that. And I feel like I've got kindred spirits here with me today, and I'm thrilled to spend some time with you. So let's go ahead and dive in. Tell us quickly your story as far as how you got into realizing that there was maybe a breakdown in the way that people were going about trying to build passive income, right? People realized that, hey, I want that, but these financing barriers are in place or keeping me from that. At what point did you guys start to have some breakthroughs? And tell us your story, how you came to this kind of realization that, hey, we can break through some of these common limitations with some creative financing.
Well, and I think that's really dials back into how we even first got started, because I met Jenn in 2008. She was a teacher. I worked at a car dealership. And in 2008, many of you remember the market was starting to crash. Deals were starting to pop up right on the MLS. And this is when we started doing a strategy called BRRRR. I didn't know it was called that back then, but we were buying these junkers in really nice neighborhoods. We would remodel them, make them really nice, rent them out, go to the bank, take our money back out, and then find another deal. And our goal, after I met Jenn, she was like, the girl of my dreams. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to get married. We're going to have kids. We were dating for 30 days and we took a trip to Florida. We're originally from Rochester, New York. So a month dating and we're in Florida together. And as we were cruising, I'm like, this is like a fantasy. Like this won't really come true until I'm like, 70 years old, but now I'm 30. It sounded really great. And this was back then. So, but we started doing these BRRRR projects, got married, had kids. And, after doing one of them in 2016 is when we realized that there was something more than just doing this strategy, because it was slow. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of things involved. I'm working a job where we're hiring contractors. You're going to the houses.
Yeah, it was just a lot more maintenance, the calls from being landlords. And although I had stepped away from teaching, I was now a stay-at-home mom, and he worked crazy hours at the dealership. I was trying to man all of that. And it was wasn't like we couldn't see the big picture of how could we actually work together full time and have this freedom, because there wasn't a ton of cash flow. The maintenance and repairs were eating into that. And so that's when we stumbled into creative financing. So in 2017, we took our 5 rentals and switched them to rent to own, which ended up helping us tremendously. And the tenants became homeowners eventually, some of them. And so it was a really cool opportunity to switch gears there. And then we also learned that we didn't need to go to the banks and BRRRR. You could really just help people with off-market properties or, with with realtors and be able to buy properties without banks.
Now you guys are using this term BRRRR. Walk us through for anybody that doesn't know what you're talking about.
So a BRRRR is a strategy that they've labeled that, but really what it is we're finding a fixer-upper, but in a nice neighborhood. What we usually did was we found some suburbs, like the neighborhoods I grew up in actually is where we first started, because I knew it well, right? I'd find a fixer-upper that I got at a really big discount. I found it online through the MLS. An agent helped me buy it, but I bought it right, because there wasn't in 2008, there was as many buyers. Then I hired contractors to go renovate it now, right? Because it had to be livable and nice. So we put roof and siding and windows and kitchen and bathroom and flooring, paint. landscaping, like all the things. We had to fix the garage because it's all
Mm-hmm.
jagged up. But so we did that. And then after that, we put in a renter. And then we went to the bank and said, I own this property free and clear, because we had to raise the cash to do it, which was hard. And then when we refinanced it, the bank says, well, if you don't owe anything on it, we'll give you 75% back of the value. So I had to sign through an LLC that I'm going to personally guarantee this debt. And then our renters are going to be paying on the house. But the challenge with that is you take out a 25-year mortgage or a 20-year mortgage, you add in the taxes, you add in the insurance. Some places in parts of the country have HOAs, right? You start adding in even management, and you've realized there's really not much money left over for you at the end of that. And one small repair, like the hot water tank or the shower faucet, like this one still gets me because the shower was redone. And the faucet, which was like $700 to get it replaced while we were on vacation years later, and it's $750. I'm like, isn't this under warranty? They said, yeah, but we have to mail in the parts to Moen, and it could be months before you get it back. And I'm like, I can't have these people without a shower. So what am I supposed to do? Right.
Was not passive.
Wasn't passive, and it wasn't really as cash flowy.
Yeah.
So on paper, it looked great. I mean, Joe and Jenn own all these properties. You guys, it looked good on paper, but in the realistic thing, it was a little bit more trickier than that. But like what Jenn kind of piggyback off of, when we learned creative finance, which meant I didn't have to go to a bank, we actually started reaching out to sellers who had beautiful turnkey houses that didn't owe any money on them, some of them. And the first one we ran into, his name was Steve. And Steve inherited his grandfather's home, rented it to some friends, a coworker actually, but he lived like an hour away. So it was a kind of time consuming for him to go over there and fix the smallest little thing. So when we connected, I said I could buy your house. I was interested in buying it. He wanted to sell it to us. And when we talked about it, he's like, this is not going to be some low ball offer. And I'm like, I think what you're asking is fair. I'm still getting a good deal on it. But would you be open to being seller financing, where I'll buy it, I'll close on it. It's all recorded in the county. But instead of me taking a loan out through Bank of America, if I pay your price, I'll just pay you monthly. Bank of Steve, because and he said, yeah, that'd be fine. He doesn't really mind that as long as he gets his price. So how we did the deal is I paid his price. I paid even all of the closing costs, but we bought it with $100 down, no credit check needed, no bank approval needed. Attorney closed it within usually about 30 days. This is in Rochester, New York. And we had a 0% mortgage with a $500 payment going to him every month. So after I added the taxes and insurance, we could cash flow like $500 a month, which is nice. And when our renters moved in, they gave us $10,000 to move into that house. So we bought it with $100 down and some closing costs. And this was the first house that we bought was turnkey. Like I didn't have to hire a contractor to put a new roof on it. We didn't do anything to the kitchen. Like we didn't have to do anything. It was like rent ready to go. So after we kind of did that, I was like, that was the easiest and one of the most profitable deals we did, paying like top dollar for his house. I was like, okay, holy cow, no signing, no chasing the contractors and doing all of these things. Like this is what we want to do from now on. So that's exactly what we did. And when we started doing more of those deals, that's where I realized like, I don't have to do this till I'm 70. I could walk away from my job a lot sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Changed everything. Because you guys realize, okay, if that worked once, then we can do it again, right? So is that the model? I mean, that's one example of the creating financing option you guys have employed. Has that been your favorite? Has that been the primary one that you've just said, okay, that worked, let's duplicate that model over and over again? Or have you got other ones that are just as sweet as that one?
We do. So the free and clear properties, which are great. I didn't realize like 40% of the country has a free and clear property. So once I realized that, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of these opportunities out there. But what about the other 60%? What about the people who have a really nice house in a nice neighborhood? And I have got one right now. They've reached out to us in Cape Coral, Florida. It's a beautiful house. It's turnkey. He put it on the market with an agent. It's not selling. Mm-hmm. He started at $1.2 million for the house. He's down to $800,000. Wow. He's getting divorced. He's moving back up north. It's a 3,000 square foot house with an in-ground pool, on the water, boat lift, the whole nine. It's really nice. If I lived in Cape Coral, Florida, this would be the house I'd be living in. But his challenge is, and it's even 15 feet above sea level. So even with all the hurricanes, he's like, his house didn't have an issue with any of it. So it's a nice property. But his big thing was he needs to get $40,000 to pay his ex-wife per the court. And so what we've negotiated, we could buy it for $800,000, $40,000 down. But see, the difference is Audie is his name. He's got a mortgage on it, and he owes about $500,000 on that mortgage at a 2.875 interest rate. So it's under 2.9%. And I didn't realize the strategy. The other one was how to buy the house. And it's like assuming the mortgage, but without having to do any of that. So you're definitely not assuming it. I want to make sure I'm crystal clear there. But you're able to buy the house, and the mortgage will stay in the seller's name, and you're able to make those payments on their behalf. And there's title companies and attorneys. It's a completely legal way to do it. I just didn't even know that was a strategy. And this is not something, disclaimer, I am not that cool to where like Joe and Jen invented this. This strategy has been going on for decades and decades and decades. It took me 15 years that I even knew this was a real thing. And then when I did, I realized that it doesn't matter if the market rate now interest rates are high, because they are. But if rates were able to still be bought at 2.875, the market would be on fire. Well, if I could still find those deals on turnkey houses where the seller's motivated, they've tried putting it on the market, it doesn't work. A low cash offer doesn't work because it's not a fixer upper. What else is he going to do? And so when we talked about that deal, he's thrilled. And my gosh, it's a really nice house. So that's just one example. And this is where we've found where if you're able to just, get in touch with sellers, especially we love social media because a lot of times they could find us. But then we have these conversations, and it obviously doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for a bunch of people, and you'd be pleasantly surprised. Many times they want to hit the easy button on a nice house too, and sometimes always listening, it isn't working for them. Now what, right?
When you say find them on social media, I mean, how do you initially understand that people are in these situations that are unique, where they need the cash out of the house, but they don't want to sell the property, right? What's your prospecting, your best prospecting method? You said social media, but tell us more detail. Like, what do you do on social media to find these opportunities?
We've got some gold for you right now. We've got some legit gold. If you're listening, get ready to take some notes, because this is going to be the game changer. When I realized no matter whatever business you have, if you need leads, right? You're going to need, if you own a tire shop, you need to find people who need tires for their cars. Well, I want to buy houses, so I need to get in touch with sellers, and you could pay thousands of dollars for marketing. If you're an agent or whatever, an investor, you spend a lot of money on marketing, right? Say who you are. But when we realized you can get leads for free anywhere around the country by using Facebook groups, this is what changed everything. So I'm going to give you exactly what we do. If you're listening and you have a Facebook page, great. If you don't, you should get one. They're free. It doesn't cost you anything, but get one.
Personal page or Facebook profile?
Profile. I apologize. Okay. So it's just you. It's not some fancy business. It's like, hi, I am Joe Delafave. And if I want to buy houses in Orlando, Florida, I'm just using it as an example, I will go to Facebook, search bar. I'm going to type in Orlando, Florida. I'm going to hit groups because it asks you, are you looking for pages, people, posts, or groups? I'm going to click groups. And then it shows you this really super long list, because there's probably thousands of in the Orlando area, if not hundreds, tons of them, of all the different Facebook groups. And it could be yard sale groups. It could be I love Orlando groups. It could be I'm moving to Orlando groups. It could be garage sale groups. It could be looking for love in Orlando, which works because maybe if they did find love, there's an extra house there, right? The mom groups, the dad groups, all the different groups that have a lot of people in them. You join them, all of them. There's not one that I don't join usually. And then what I do inside of those groups, this is where the magic happens. So I make a post inside of that. So I'm now in the group. I'm going to make a post, and I'm just going to put this in a post, just normal thing, right? So I go to make my post, and it says, does anyone have a house for sale that's not market ready? Does anyone have a house for sale that's not market ready? I'm looking to buy one in the next 2 to 3 weeks, or I could put 2 to 3 months. Now, what I do is before I make that as a post, you can make the background like different colors, like purple or pink or blue, like pick one. Don't pick the poop emoji one. That one doesn't get as much, but like the pink one really works well. The blue one
might get a real piece of junk house is what you're saying if you do that.
You never know though, right? So what happens is then when you put that post, some of these groups have 20, 30, 50,000 people in them. So you do 5 or 6 of those a day, 5 or 6 days a week. And by the end of the week, you've got in front of usually, hundreds of thousands of people for free. Now with Facebook, it only shows it to about 7% of the people inside of the group, but that's still, you're talking tens of thousands of people for free. Now people will see your post. They're going to reach out to you. You're going to be people comment. There's going to be people who message you privately. And now this is where the magic goes in, and you start those conversations right through Messenger. So I'm not even having to call them. I'll ask them a few questions through Messenger. And if it sounds like we need to get on a call, we do. If they're just like, you're just an investor trying to buy up the house, it's like, I'm not going to talk to them on the phone. But many times we find somebody who is moving, or they've already relocated, or the house needs no work and it's beautiful. Sometimes it's a fixer-upper, all types of stuff. And this works in Orlando, Florida. It works in Dallas, Texas. It works in North Pole, Alaska, because we did a deal up there in North Pole, Alaska. Not on purpose. The lady saw our advertising in North Carolina and said, buy my house in North Pole, Alaska. So we did. So these deals are out there everywhere, and you'd be surprised how many people need help. And when I first got started, we were only looking for junkers. So if it wasn't a fixer-upper, there was nothing I could do with it. And then I realized all these really nice houses, sometimes they're in a situation too. And
just need out.
Yeah. And we always ask, like, why wouldn't you want to list it with an agent? And, usually they give you some reason why they don't want to, and that's okay.
What's the common response? I'd be interested to hear.
Holy cow. So
I think the number one is that they don't want a lot of people through their house. So
okay. It's more privacy thing than it is paying a commission.
Yeah, it really isn't about the commission. Most times it's, I think, embarrassment. If they have a lot of stuff, they don't maybe have the money to get it market ready, hence the way we word that post. And so it's more of an emotional, mental thing than a commission, I think.
Some they've already moved. We have the one today. They actually, husband and wife, both work the third shift. So they sleep during the day. And they said, the only time you're going to be able to show the house, we're going to be sleeping, and we don't want to deal with it. That was like literally the people who said it today. So there's like a huge list of reasons why.
And a timely sale. Like they know that if we're buying it, we're going to buy it on this day, or, hopefully close around it. Like we're the true buyers, and they didn't have to wait and see what the market told them. And they were already off to Texas from Florida. So.
Yeah. Cause like you just kind of touched on it. We just did a deal in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. The house is 2 years old. It's a new house pretty much. Husband had his job transferred to Texas. He's already gone. Wife's here packing up. They reached out and said, we need to sell it. We don't really have much equity. We agreed on if we could buy it with $12,000 down. We took over their existing mortgage at a 4% rate. So the payment's low. We could actually cash flow on that, because at 7%, it doesn't cash flow, or 8%, it definitely doesn't. But at 4%, it does. And so now I'm buying a turnkey house in Florida with like $20,000, $21,000 out of pocket total. That was including the closing costs. For $20,000, I own a 2-year-old house in Florida at a 4% rate with no credit check.
So it's seller financed. You don't have to qualify for a loan, and you're not assuming the mortgage, right?
Right.
And walk us through, as you think about that, obviously there's tons of opportunities out there, way more than people thought. You've given us a great avenue. I mean, would you say that that's your best avenue, is through Facebook groups, just being in conversation with people?
I love it because, when so many people either pull lists or they're paying for this, and I just feel like when you just are able to connect people where they're at, so many people are on Facebook. It's like 72% of the population is on Facebook. So there's a lot of people there. I could get in front of tens of thousands of people for free, and I could target anywhere just by joining groups in that area. So I've spent money on Google ads. I've spent money on direct mail. I've driven for dollars. I've knocked on doors. All of it works, but when I could do it for free, and I could go to Italy next summer and spend a month there and still post into groups from Italy, I could still be messaging sellers through Messenger in Italy, and then, find a real good one and say, okay, out of the 10 leads I got, here's the 2 real good ones I want to talk to. The others kind of weed themselves out. So therefore now I'm able to get through the conversations a lot quicker too. And I like that better.
How much money would somebody need to have, let's say, on hand, would you say? And I know it varies based on what part of the country you're purchasing in. But if you said for somebody to really get started, right? In most cases, would you say that you've got to come in with some money down in order to get people what they want to facilitate that deal? And if so, what is that number? Is it 25,000? Is it 100,000? What would you say would be ideal for somebody? I mean, ideal would be the more the better, right? But for somebody really, like, realistically to get started and not have a false start, what kind of situation would they need to be in?
So for me, I would think to target certain areas of the country. You guys would be surprised. There's houses still out there for under $100,000.
Hmm.
Ohio, Pennsylvania, some
Yeah.
places in upstate New York, just to name a few places in Indiana. And so many of these places you can get into where if in many of the properties we buy, I mean, that one was an exception where we gave them 12,000 because it was like a new house, right? But most of the times we buy with $100 down. And we tell the seller, we typically buy with no money down. Okay. And that's like verbatim what I say to them. And many times they're like, yeah, that's fine. Or they might say, no, I need a down payment to help me move. And we find out they need $3,000. So the reason why I like some of those inexpensive states, the property's cash flow, $3,000-4,000, which is, $1,000 down and covering some closing costs. And I could be into a deal. And the one thing I would say, if you don't have the money in the beginning, find somebody to borrow it from. But the reason why I say it this way, because if you offer that property now rent to own, we typically collect, 10% of the purchase price. So if we buy it at 75, it might be offered at rent to own for 100, 110, depending on what it's actually worth. Somebody will give us a 10 grand to move in, and now I've paid all my money back and I've just got a free house because the 10,000 they gave me is a non-refundable option deposit. And when we found out like we can do it this way without having to really come up with 20% down and then just put a renter in there anymore. Oh my gosh. Like this is how we can scale and just continue to grow our portfolio. And it's great.
This audience, right? Successful real estate agents. My guess is some are thinking what I'm thinking, which is I've always wanted to get my kids more involved in the business. And, I don't necessarily want to fund it for them. I want them to have the experience of creative financing, right? So my wheels have been turning. I have a daughter who turns 18 this month, and a son who turns 17 in April. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this would be a really interesting strategy for them to start to learn, right? To where you could start to help them. Because if I could go back in time, right? I'm 45 now. If I were to go back in time and I were their age, I would start buying real estate and holding it, right? Like there's just so much wisdom in that concept. Yet, right? I don't have to be able to go back in time, but I am able to go back and guide them to do what I wish I would have done, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about how you guys have gotten your kids involved, right? Obviously you homeschool your kids, which is beautiful. You're better than we are. We tried that during COVID and we're not successful. So I commend you tremendously. But how cool to have so much time with them, right? And talk us through how you've gotten them involved in the business. Cause I think that's beautiful, is to not just spend more time with them, but to actually teach them how to build wealth through real estate.
Yeah, well, I think it started at, they were in my tummy. So we were taking them, they were always with us, whether they're in the carrier, they were running around laying mulch down. So just always involving them every step of the way. So now that the time that they're 9 and 11, they're really starting to understand what it means to build wealth. My 9-year-old, we're in the car, is asking me like, what was it about the entities that you were talking about? Like an LLC, nice. Right? So like you start having real adult like conversations, but at their level where you can kind of break it down and have them understand it. And, what asset protection means, and, why do we buy these properties, and why we're really helping these sellers out. And then what it does for us as a family, using the Italy thing, like we would love to go to Italy for a month. And to be able to do that, if mommy was a teacher, she wouldn't be able to go, for a month long if we chose to go in April. Or even yesterday, I took my daughter to piano lesson at 3:00 and, to stop and realize I wouldn't be able to do that if I were, at a school teaching everyone else's kids, but because we built our lifestyle like that. So I think that it's just involving them every step of the way, setting boundaries, right? Like telling them, okay, we're, going to do a call right now, so please be quiet. And then, you explain why, it's not, don't close the door and don't discuss it. I think that generation has long gone, and we're very much, communicating at the dinner table about what business is. It's not like business happens while mom and dad are at work and then you don't talk about it. It kind of ebbs and flows, and it's just a family discussion. And we also put them to work like in our CRM. They absolutely love going in, doing follow-up with any sellers in there. My daughter had Zillow pulled up because she said one of the sellers sold their house and she wanted to confirm it. And so she was able to take them out of the CRM. So it's really cool to see them grow and evolve and do things that I didn't even know they knew. I didn't know how she knew how to do that.
Yeah, she's super smart. They both are. My son, I mean, he gets on stage when we have a meetup because we host meetups here. We go to a lot of them. We love connecting with other investors and agents. But I think it's just getting the kids involved. There's no too soon age. Mm-hmm. And, the thing is that both of our kids, they've got great taste.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you guys want to fund this lifestyle that you want, like, you better start doing this stuff now. So when you're older, you can do all of these things. Taylor Swift tickets aren't cheap, right? And, like, my daughter loves Taylor. So it's like all of those things. That you just want to give them that education. Because I feel like that's the thing in school. They taught us all of the, school things. I'm 47, mm-hmm. but I really believe that when you're teaching them real world situations at this age, mm-hmm. It's a whole other level. And the conversations really show from it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by this concept. I'm excited to get assignment from Dad is going to be to watch this episode of my podcast and take notes and tell me what ahas you had. Talk to me, and for Malia and Corbin that are listening to this, I want Joe and Jen to describe what life could look like. You've kind of hinted at some things, right? But what does life either look like for you guys, or what are you aspiring to create with this strategy that ought to open their eyes to say, you know what, I think I do want to learn this. And for the entire audience, this is going to be an aha moment for you as well to say, you know what, all the barriers that have been put upon me or the path that I thought I had to follow to build wealth have just been removed. And I'm much closer to what I had wanted than I ever thought possible. So talk us through what life can look like pursuing this kind of strategy.
It could be anything that you want it to be, which is almost kind of scary for most people. So I think allowing yourself to dream and figure out what are your goals and what are your aspirations. And if you do want to go travel and eat at fine dining and all of that stuff that costs, like Taylor Swift, I guess, right? So all of that's going to cost a lot of money. And, working a 9-to-5, that's not going to build that wealth. And so being able to create somewhat passive income to create that long-term effect. Like that's why we love rent to own. You get the big non-refundable option, you get the cash flow. And then when the tenant buys you out, you get that big back end check that you can then take most of that money ideally and put it right back into your business, or take some of that money and go enjoy some of it. And, having that big picture, I went into college thinking I was going to go to college, get my master's, go to school. And I was literally just over broke, like doing all the right things and literally had no money to show for it. But here I was showing up to work like a good little American, and then I meet Joe, who's like, hey, there's a whole world out there that if we start buying these real estate properties, we could do this. And I think having those honest conversations with people who've been there, who go after the people that are doing it and see how they got there and just emulate it and do it quicker by hiring mentors and coaches and being around them and to really absorb and learn what they did maybe wrong so you don't repeat those mistakes.
Yeah, because I think that was key. Because I was 42 and I got to walk away from my dealership job, and now the kind of income that we make just based on the properties that we've been buying for years, and we really cranked it up 5 years ago to buy quite a bit more once we learned these strategies. So it got to the point where when COVID happened and they laid everybody off at the dealership, I didn't have to go back to work. And when I had that kind of aha moment, like here it is that now we moved from upstate New York, we traveled, we came down to Florida to get out of the snow, and we fell in love with the weather and the climate in the area. So we made that decision. We're just going to move. So we went back to New York on a whim, sold our house. We still have all of our properties up there, and we brought all of our stuff and moved to Florida, have a beautiful house here. And I could get to go to Starbucks in the morning with my daughter.
I was just going to say, sometimes real wealth too, you can't put a dollar on it, but be able to go to Starbucks or make breakfast with your kids or have a leisure morning where you're not rushing out the door and the stress of, a boss going to yell at you when you get there. Like those things, if you've experienced it, it's really nice.
I used to. Well, That's what I talked to Brookie about, our daughter, this morning. I was like, I worked on Saturdays. My days off were Friday and Sunday from my dealership. I had to work Saturdays. And when my daughter's in school, she went to school 5 days a week. So I didn't get to see her very much on Saturday until 6 o'clock when I got home. So the only day that we spent, the four of us as a family, was Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And, Sunday I'm trying to, my side hustle of real estate and this and that. So now the fact that I get to spend every day with the kids and we get to do things together as a family, it's been the best thing that you can imagine. Because I know a lot of successful people from the dealership world, and they made a lot of money. Some of these guys, and even the owners, are really wealthy from it. And the one common thing that all of these successful men said was, I miss seeing my kids grow up. I made a lot of money, accomplished a lot of things, but I wasn't there for my kids to grow up, and I can't get that back. And I could continue to make money after they're gone. And I'm like, well, geez, if I could just do both, right? If I could be there for my kids and have this life, because it's a lot of work. It doesn't, it's not just palm trees and sunshine, although there's a lot of that going on down here. It's a lot of work though, too. So there are times where like we sacrifice and we do miss things and things like that.
And we have a lot of help, I think, too. Like once you grow a team, you have people working with you, maybe a house assistant or a nanny, or, just filling in the gaps, because you are one person or two people in our case, but you still are running multiple things. So don't be afraid to hire help. I think delegation is huge. Buy back your time.
It's been such a fun episode. I put up on the screen creativefinanceplaybook.com. Is that where you would want to send people to learn more about this?
Yeah, that's a great spot. And, I know we talked about that post that we share in Facebook groups. It's on there. And if you want to use the same 10 questions that we ask every seller, it's on there too. It's free for your audience. Just go get it. You can't miss it. But these are the exact questions that we ask every seller where they make us the offer. So if you guys want that, it's on there. Go get it.
Yeah.
I love it. And keep in mind, guys, I'm not paid to promote these guys. This is not a paid episode. It might sound like an infomercial. It's not. I do this because I seek out who has great ideas that allow people to have both a successful business and a significant life. I serve the real estate industry. I know many of you see these properties come in front of you and you're like, boy, I just wish I could take down more of them. And I brought this to you today because when this came across my desk, I was like, I've got to learn more about this, because I see so many who are not able to ever retire. My friend Matt Plumer says, I've never been to a real estate agent's retirement party, right? And maybe you're feeling that way, and or you're just looking at the next generation saying, boy, if I were 18 again, or if I were in my early 20s, I would start buying real estate. And I wouldn't wait until I got all the way to where I was later in life, right? And I had kids, or I'd made it through that phase, right? I would start doing it now. And most can't see a way to do that. They just can't see that there's actually a path for them. So super excited to promote you guys. Grateful for all of the wisdom and nuggets that you've shared with me and with this audience. I appreciate you both. And any final words or bits of advice before we wrap up?
I just love that. Like you said, as an agent, you're really trying to help your seller out. And this is just one extra tool in the toolbox, especially right now, where if they have a low interest rate and someone else, even you yourself, could take it down and build your portfolio, do it for you and your family. Because yes, making the money right now is great, but to build it long term, it really does change the game.
Yeah. And I think of all of our friends who are agents, because we have a ton of them that are. And they're like, I always help all of my investor friends, buy their properties, and I'm helping all of these sellers sell their properties, but I'm not buying anything for myself.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I get a commission check, and that's great. And so after having these conversations, there's lots of agents who are very successful investors too. And it kind of gives you that, I think, double-edged sword.
Oh, absolutely.
So for an example, if you need to generate leads, use that Facebook method. It doesn't cost you any money. And the one thing, if you're an agent, maybe you could buy that as an investment property. If not, I know many of the agents who use that post, but then they actually get it as a listing. And so this is a way to get you more listings. And if you want to start investing by buying it with seller financing, so you don't have to pay 7 or 8% rate and credit checks and 20% down. And, it's really find an attorney in your area or a title company who really understands how to do this. We have a huge list. If you need any help, reach out. We can connect you with one usually. But, find a title company or attorney who knows how to do this, because you don't have to be the pro. Find a good one that knows how to cross the T's, dot the I's, and you can buy all of the real estate you want.
Amazing.
It's a game changer for sure.
Amazing. And the wealthiest people in the world own a lot of real estate. And the freest people in the world own a lot of real estate. So you guys, I'm so grateful for you. To the audience, when you look up above me, you see the Think Bigger sign up there, TB. That stands for Think Bigger. And my final request of everybody listening here today are these 3 simple words, and they are go think bigger. Joe and Jen, it's been such a pleasure. Grateful to have had you on the show today. And I look forward to sending as many people as possible to creativefinanceplaybook.com so that they too can enjoy the freedom that you guys enjoy. Appreciate you both so much.
Thanks so
you.
much.
Now, before you go, remember, big thinkers and high achievers take action. Here's one way to do this. Find me on social media and send me in a direct message one aha that you're going to take action upon from today's episode. I can't wait to be connected to another big